Stop thinking of that tree stump as a problem you need to solve. I know that sounds crazy. You walk past it every day, you mow around it, you've gotten quotes from the professionals, and every quote says the same thing. $3 to $5 to grind it out and be done with it. But what if I told you that stump sitting in your yard isn't an obstacle? It's actually one of the most valuable pieces of free material you have on your homestead. And the Amish families I know don't remove stumps the way everyone expects. They transform them. They milk them. They work with them instead of against them. My name is David, and I've spent the last 3 years documenting how plain communities actually manage tree stumps, not through grinding or explosive removal, but through a completely different philosophy that saves you hundreds of dollars and gives you materials, tools, and solutions you never saw coming. Here's what most homeowners get wrong. When a tree comes down in a storm or you decide to clear land for a garden, the stump becomes the enemy. You hate looking at it. You want it gone. So you call the service, pay the money, and within a day it's a pile of mulch. But the Amish approach is different. They ask a different question first. What can this stump do for us while it's still in the ground? Because a stump doesn't have to be removed. It can be worked, it can be aged, it can be repurposed. It can do jobs for you for years or even decades. Think about it practically. A tree stump is a perfect natural workbench. It's already the right height, it's solid, it doesn't move. One Amish farmer I met in Ohio uses 3 stumps in his yard, one as his primary bench for splitting kindling, one as a platform for his grinder when he processes grain, and one as a stable base for his blacksmith's vise. He never had to build or buy anything. He just left the stumps and let them earn their keep. That's one perspective nobody talks about. The stump becomes infrastructure, and infrastructure has value. But there's something even more ingenious happening on these farms, and it's something that costs you nothing and saves you hundreds in the long run. The stumps that are left standing actually improve your soil. A tree that's been growing for 30, 40, or 50 years, its root system runs deep. When you leave the stump in place and let it rot naturally, that decay process pulls nutrients from deep in the subsoil up into the topsoil. It creates pathways for water. It feeds organisms. Mycorrhizal fungi colonize the rotting wood and spread through your garden beds. One Amish gardener in Lancaster County told me she specifically leaves stumps in her vegetable garden because, after 5 years, the soil around them is the richest and darkest on her entire property. She doesn't remove stumps from her beds, she plants around them intentionally. That's not compromise, that's strategy. And then there's the material recovery angle, which is where the real economics hide. Most homeowners don't realize that a stump in the ground is an extremely valuable piece of wood. After a tree has been dead for 3 to 5 years, the outer wood begins to soften and rot, but the heartwood underneath stays hard and dense. That heartwood is usable. It can be carved, it can be split into shingles or roof tiles, it can be milled into boards if you have access to a bandsaw mill. It can be turned into mushroom-growing logs. And here's the real kicker. Gourmet mushroom logs sell for $3.05 to $5.00 each if you inoculate them properly. One mature oak stump can yield 3 to 5 usable logs. Do the math. That's $1.50 to $2.50 tonstries worth of mushroom-growing substrate that's just sitting there for free. But the mushroom logs are just one pathway. I've documented 7 different income or resource streams that Amish families harvest from stumps they never remove. And the first one catches almost everyone off guard. Oyster mushrooms. They fruit naturally on dead wood. Once a stump enters that soft rot phase, usually 2 to 3 years after the tree dies, mushrooms show up on their own if there's enough moisture. The Amish farmers I spoke with don't plant them. They just inoculate the stumps with spawn in late winter, keep them moist through spring, and by summer, they're harvesting pounds of mushrooms that would cost $1.05 to $2.00 BSU per pound at a farmer's market. One stump can produce 2 to 4 pounds per flush, and there can be 3 to 4 flushes per growing season. That's the real stump value nobody calculates. The second income stream is firewood recovery, not from burning the stump itself, which is inefficient and messy, but from the fact that an undisturbed stump keeps producing sucker wood for years. Every spring, the roots send up new shoots around the base. That wood is green and fresh, but if you let it dry for a year, you have free firewood material. One old apple stump in a homestead I visited produces 8 to 12 strong shoots every year. After 3 years of drying, that's enough seasoned wood to heat part of the house for a winter. The stump never gets removed. It becomes an annual, renewable firewood plantation. The third pathway is animal bedding and compost acceleration. As the stump rots, the wood becomes soft and crumbly. After 5 to 7 years, what's left is a pile of beautiful, dark, nutrient-rich wood compost. You can chip it, bag it, and use it as bedding for chickens or goats. It suppresses ammonia and parasites better than most commercial products. Or you can just leave it there and it becomes the heart of your compost pile. The microbes that colonize rotting wood are exactly the microbes you want in your compost heap. One stump provides the biological starter culture for better compost all on its own. Now, here's where the philosophy gets really interesting. And this is something the mainstream approach to stump removal completely misses. The time it takes a stump to naturally rot and break down is not a bug in the system. It's a feature. Every month that stump sits there, it's doing something for you. It's hosting fungi that are improving your soil. It's capturing moisture. It's feeding insects that become food for birds that eat the pests in your garden. It's releasing nutrients slowly into the ground around it. That process takes 5 to 7 years, depending on the wood type and climate. And during those 5 to 7 years, you're harvesting value from it instead of paying a service to remove it. A grinding service removes a stump in 2 hours. The stump is gone. The value is gone. You get a pile of chips. But if you leave that stump in place and milk it the way Amish farmers do, you're working with natural systems instead of against them. You're turning an eyesore into an asset. And here's the number that changed how I think about this entire problem. The average homeowner spends $3.50 to remove one stump. Over a 10-year period on a property with 5 stumps, that's $1.750 just in removal costs. But if you leave those stumps, keep them dry, inoculate them with mushroom spawn, and harvest them carefully, you could generate $3.00 to $4.00 per stump over that same period in mushroom harvests alone. We're talking about a $2 swing in the economics of your property, just by changing your perspective on what a stump is. The second thing the grinding method erases is wood volume. A mature tree stump, let's say a 30-year-old maple, contains something like 150 to 200 pounds of usable wood material by the time it's half rotted. That's not rotting waste, that's raw material. One Amish woodworker I met salvages heartwood from stumps he leaves for 10 years. The outer wood is gone, composted naturally, but the interior is still solid. He mills it into cutting boards and sells them for $4.00 to $6 each. He pulled 8 boards from a single oak stump. That's $3.00 worth of value extracted from something everyone else would have ground into dust. But maybe the most overlooked benefit is what I call the soil anchoring effect. When you remove all the stumps and roots from your property, you accelerate erosion. Water runs off differently. The soil structure becomes looser. Root networks that held moisture and prevented compaction are gone. But when you leave stumps in place, especially around garden edges and slope areas, those remaining root systems continue to work. They hold moisture. They prevent erosion. They keep your topsoil in place. This matters especially if your property has any slope to it. In heavy rain, the difference between having root systems in the ground and not having them is the difference between topsoil staying on your property and ending up in the creek. One more economic angle most people never calculate, and this one genuinely surprised me when I first researched it. The biomass of a tree stump, specifically the fungal colonies that colonize it, is harvestable for medicinal and culinary purposes. Lion's mane mushrooms, shiitake, wine caps, chicken of the woods. These aren't mystical fungi that only appear in distant forests. They fruit readily on dead stumps if conditions are right. And they sell. A single flush of lion's mane can yield a pound or more of premium fungal material that sells for $2.00 to $3.00 per pound to restaurants and natural food stores. One stump, properly inoculated and managed, can generate $1.00 to $1.50 per year in mushroom harvests. Over 10 years, that's stump value in the range of $1.00 to $1.55 from material that would otherwise be removed and composted. This is the information gap. This is what the grinding service doesn't tell you when they quote $3.50 per stump. They're not measuring what that stump could do if you left it in place and worked with it intelligently. And the Amish communities who've been managing land for 250 years know this by experience. They leave the stumps. They work with them, they extract value from them, and their properties become richer, not poorer, because of it. Now, the reason I'm telling you this isn't to convince you that every stump on your property should become a mushroom farm. Some stumps do need to come out. Fences need to go through certain places. Garden beds need space. Pathways need to be clear. That's legitimate. But the point is this. Before you make the call to have a stump removed, before you write that check, you need to know what that stump can actually do for you. You need to understand its value in the context of your own homestead. Here's what most people don't realize. Removing a stump completely, whether by grinding, pulling, or poisoning, leaves you with a problem. That's not the end of your work. That's actually the beginning of a much longer and more expensive problem. When you remove a stump, you remove the living root system that's been holding soil structure together, sometimes for decades. The roots of a mature oak or maple are like an underground skeleton. Take them out, and the soil collapses. Water drainage changes, compaction happens, and now you're left with a bare spot that won't grow anything decent for 2 to 3 years, even with amendment. The stump grinding company won't mention this because it's not their problem. They came, they ground, they left. You're the one left managing the aftermath. You're the one trying to reseed that bare spot every spring. You're the one dealing with the erosion if it's on a slope. You're the one spending money on topsoil and grass seed and maybe eventually a landscaper to fix what the removal created. But here's what the Amish method teaches us. A stump that you leave in place, that you work with instead of against, solves multiple problems at once. We've already talked about the mushroom angle, but let's go deeper into the other uses that make economic sense on a small homestead. Stump as a natural outdoor furniture base. A stump that's 18 to 24 inches high and reasonably solid becomes seating. Real seating. Not a decorative prop, actual functional seating for your porch, your garden, your fire pit area. If you've ever priced outdoor stools or benches, you know that a decent one runs $8.00 to $2.00. A stump costs you nothing but a little sanding and maybe a weatherproof finish. You could have 4 or 5 seating positions around your property for the price of one store-bought bench. On a homestead where you're trying to create gathering spaces without spending money, a stump becomes valuable infrastructure. Some stumps also work as natural low tables. You place a piece of salvaged wood on top, a barn board, a reclaimed shelf, whatever you have, and suddenly you have a side table for your garden. Plant a pot on top. Set a lantern on it. Use it as a potting station during planting season. The stump doesn't move, it doesn't need legs, it doesn't take up storage space in your garage. It's already there, already part of the landscape, already free. Stump as a wildlife and pollinator hub. This is one that people rarely think about until they understand it. A tree stump is not just dead wood. It's an ecosystem. As it begins to decay, and decay is the process you want to encourage, it becomes habitat. Insects colonize it. Beetles, ants, carpenter bees, beneficial wasps, and dozens of other species use it for food and shelter. Birds come to hunt those insects. Spiders set up webs. Fungi move in. What looks to you like a dead stump is actually a thriving microhabitat. Now, if you're trying to build a pollinator-friendly homestead, and most people serious about food production are, a stump becomes a productivity asset. The insects that live in the decaying wood feed birds. The birds keep your garden clear of pests. The pollinator insects work your flowers. The whole system becomes self-regulating. You're not paying for pest control because you've created habitat that manages it for you. That's worth something. That's worth a lot, actually. On a homestead where you're raising vegetables, keeping bees, maybe raising chickens, the health of your pest control ecosystem is directly tied to your food security and your bottom line. A stump that houses beneficial insects is like having a free, self-maintaining pest control contractor on your property. Stump as a natural water management feature. This is the engineering angle, and it's where the Amish understanding of land really shines through. When a stump is left in the ground, the root system, even as it decays, continues to function as a water management tool. The roots create pathways for water infiltration. They slow runoff. They allow water to soak in instead of running off toward your driveway, your neighbor's property, or your lower garden beds where you don't want excessive pooling. On sloped land, this matters tremendously. Erosion is one of the biggest hidden costs of land management. Losing topsoil year after year compounds. You can spend hundreds trying to fix erosion problems that could have been prevented by leaving stumps in strategic locations. Additionally, the decaying stump itself becomes a sponge. As the wood breaks down, it becomes increasingly porous. It holds moisture. In dry periods, that stored water is available to plants growing nearby. In wet periods, it absorbs excess water and releases it slowly. You've essentially created a natural water reservoir. People spend hundreds on rain barrels and irrigation infrastructure to accomplish what a tree stump does for free, continuously, without maintenance. The time factor. Why patience is profit. Here's where the real economic argument comes full circle. A stump doesn't do any of these things. The mushroom production, the wildlife habitat, the water management, the furniture function, immediately. These benefits unfold over time. The first year, the stump is still solid. By year 2, it's beginning to decay. By year 3 to 5, it's fully colonized by fungi, insects, and other decomposers. By year 7 to 10, it's nearly gone, soft enough to kick apart, fully integrated back into the soil as organic matter and nutrient-rich compost. This is why the Amish don't remove stumps. They understand that land is something you work with over decades and generations, not seasons and years. A stump that sits in your back pasture for 10 years isn't a problem. It's a slow-working asset. It's soil remediation. It's habitat creation. It's pest management. It's wildlife feed. It's all happening without you doing anything after that first year of mushroom setup. What to actually do with a stump. Decision tree. So let's make this practical. You have a stump. You're trying to decide, remove it or keep it. Here's the framework. First question. Is it actively blocking essential function? Is it in the middle of where you need to build a fence? Is it preventing you from mowing or creating a garden bed that would significantly increase your food production? If yes, then yes, remove it. The cost of removal is justified by the function you gain. But if it's in a corner, on the edge of a pasture, near the tree line, in an area that doesn't interfere with daily function, then the case for removal gets much weaker. The stump stays. You inoculate it with mushroom spawn if you want to go that route. You monitor it. You allow it to do the work. Second question. Do you have the energy and interest to actively use the stump this year? If you're setting up mushroom production, starting an intensive permaculture project, or building garden infrastructure, then yes, keep it and work with it immediately. If you're just keeping your head above water trying to manage what you already have, then keep it anyway. It works for you on its own schedule, without requiring your input. Third question. Is the stump in a visually prominent location where its appearance bothers you? This is the only reason I'd say remove it otherwise. If it's in the front yard where guests see it, if it's on a slope that's the focal point when you look out the window, if it genuinely affects your quality of life, then yes, the aesthetic argument might outweigh the economic argument. But if it's anywhere out of the main sight lines, aesthetics don't matter. Most stumps, if you really look at your property, are not in prominent locations. They're on the edges. They're in the corners. They're exactly where they cause no functional or aesthetic problems, but could provide real value if you let them work. The real skill that separates homesteaders who stay broke from homesteaders who build wealth is this: understanding what assets they already have and extracting value from them rather than constantly buying solutions. Every stump on your property is an asset. Every one of them is either a cost removal problem or a value production opportunity. The difference isn't the stump itself, it's how you decide to work with it. So here's what I want you to do. Before you call anyone, before you spend a dime, walk your property like a land steward, not a property manager. Look at every stump. Ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this stump in my way? Second, could this stump serve me? Third, what's the real cost of removing it versus the real value of keeping it? Most homesteaders never ask these questions. They see a stump and their brain immediately jumps to problem to solve, when sometimes the stump is actually a solution waiting to be used. I've worked with families who've had the same 3 stumps in their backfield for 15 years. You know what happened? Those stumps became wildlife habitat. They attracted beneficial insects. They held moisture in the soil around them. They became part of the ecosystem that made that property more valuable, not less. One family told me they'd been quoted $9,000 to remove all 3. They didn't remove them. Today, their property is healthier because they left them alone. The cost calculation most people do is backwards. They only count the removal cost. They don't count the time to arrange it, the damage to the yard from the grinding equipment, the cleanup afterward, or the stress of coordinating contractors. When you do the full math, removing a stump can easily cost you $5.00 to $6.00 once you factor in everything. But if you let it sit on the edge of your property, in a natural area where you don't mow, where it can decompose slowly and feed the soil and the insects and the ecosystem around it, that stump costs you nothing and contributes value every single year. Now, I'm not saying never remove a stump. Some stumps do need to come out. If it's truly in your way, if it's genuinely a safety hazard, if it's preventing you from using your land the way you need to use it, then yes, invest the effort. Use one of the methods we talked about. Get a friend. Make it a work day. Pull it out with your own hands and your own tools. That stump comes out, you keep the money, you build the skill, and you end up with a deeper connection to your land because you did the work yourself. But for the stumps on the edges, for the ones that are out of sight most of the time, for the ones that aren't actually causing you any real problems, let them go. Let them decompose. Let them feed your soil. Let them provide habitat. Watch what grows around them. See if they become useful without you having to do anything at all. This is the long-term thinking that builds real homestead wealth. The Amish families I know who've been on the same land for generations, they don't fight with their stumps. They work with them. They let them become part of the landscape. They use them as seats, as landmarks, as anchors for garden layouts, as habitat. They understand something that most modern homeowners never get to. Every element of your land, if you give it time and attention, can become an asset instead of a problem. So when you're standing in your back corner looking at that stump and you're thinking about calling someone to grind it out, pause. Really pause. Ask yourself, what if I didn't remove this? What if I let it become something useful instead? What if this stump, left alone, eventually becomes one of the things my grandkids remember about this place? Sometimes the best decision is the one that costs you nothing and gives you time. The final truth about tree stumps is this: they're not your enemy. They're not even really a problem. They're just wood that used to be a tree, sitting on your land, doing what wood does, which is slowly returning to soil. If you can accept that process, if you can let it happen without fighting it, then you've just unlocked one of the deepest skills in homesteading. You've learned how to work with time instead of against it. You've learned how to extract value from things that most people throw away or pay to remove. You've learned how to think like someone who builds wealth on a homestead, not someone who just spends it. That's the real way forward with stumps. Not renting equipment, not paying contractors, not fighting with nature, but understanding, deciding, and working with what you've got on the land you own. Every stump is a choice. Make the choice that serves your homestead, not the choice that serves someone else's bottom line. I want to thank you for watching this all the way through. This kind of thinking, working with what you have, instead of always buying solutions, that's what separates people who talk about homesteading from people who actually live it. If this video helped you see your stumps, or your land, or your homestead in a new way, please do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next one, and turn on your notifications. That way, every time I upload a new hack, a new way to build or fix or improve your homestead without breaking the bank, you'll be the first to know. Thanks for being here. Thanks for building your life the old-fashioned way.